Greetings. It is Saturday, March the 1st, 2025. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is a special report, Defending Sacred Ground, Mr. Zelensky's visit to the White House. My, what an interesting year this is turning into. First off, I would like everyone here to seek out on one of the many video platforms, YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, all the others, to look at the press conference that occurred in the White House yesterday. It's about 50 minutes long, just under 50 minutes. Now, I don't want to hear from anybody, oh, that's too much, that's too long. No, it's not. Why do I know that? Because most people are going to be going out and seeking maybe 10 or even 15 or 20 5 to 10 minute analyses of what was spoken about. Add up the time. It's more efficient and far better for your education to get things from the source. Watch the whole thing from beginning through the middle to the end, and you'll see exactly what the truth is. And I'm going to give you my analysis, but seek things out for yourself. Just want to say that and get that out of the way. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with American ritual, especially if you're overseas, the Oval Office, where the President of the United States works and greets people from other countries and puts together deals and deals with crises, etc., is a sacred place. The White House is sacred territory, thus I call this report Defending Sacred Ground. Now, I've been to the White House myself on several occasions, a few times guiding people on tours. Now, I don't conduct the tours, I attend them, and this is something that you can do here, and if anyone's interested in how that's actually arranged or done, just contact me at the email address, and I'll be happy, more than happy, to give you instructions on how to do that, whether you're a person here living in the United States or you are a visitor from overseas. But every time I go to the White House, I wear a suit and tie. Even as a tourist, I wear a suit and tie. You show respect for certain institutions. You might not like the guy sitting there. You might think he's a piece of subhuman garbage, like more than a few I can think of offhand. But you show respect for your country, your culture, and the institution of the presidency. Mr. Zelensky got off to a bad start yesterday by showing up in what appeared to be a tracksuit. At least wear a military fatigue, that would make some sense, but everyone's pretty sick of that, and there's no artillery shells landing in Washington, D.C. It's a pretty safe place compared to Kiev, and I'm going to use that pronunciation to be a little politically incorrect right now. And he could have worn a suit, would have been a good excuse, but no, he couldn't do that. Trump, of course, played it very politely. Oh, look, he dressed up for me. He just let it go. He went into the Oval Office, and they had the ritual, which is sitting in front of the fireplace underneath the plant. The plant, yes, that plant's been there for 100 years, or derivatives of it. Long story there, but I won't get sidetracked right now. Anyways, they sat down, and what are we doing? We're trying to end a war. That's what Trump's trying to do. He's trying to stop a lot of senseless killing. Is anybody in the world against that? Apparently some are. People who make a lot of money out of it. The conversation began in a very civil, very, very polite way. Not too many days earlier, we had the UK Prime Minister Stormer, who is by all definitions a very reprehensible excuse for a human and does not believe in free speech, believes in putting people in prison for memes and all sorts of nastiness, but still it was civil. It was respectful. The same thing with French President Macron, we're trying to figure out whether or not he married an older man back in the day. Also, very civil, showing respect to the country, not necessarily the leaders. There's not much respect for them in many circles here, but we're showing respect for those peoples. And they showed respect to us. Now, behind the scenes, of course, you might be, in a shouting match of the kind you saw. That's possible. Mr. Zelensky started to go south when he pulled out a folder with all these war crimes or these people who were starved or something. That wasn't the point of the meeting. The point of the meeting was to set the agenda for a ceasefire, a mineral deal, which the United States doesn't really need, and I'll go into that in a little while. And it was an excuse to inject the United States into that whole geographical area to, one, get resources, two, put infrastructure in, and three, do it without military presence. It's better to have American businessmen on the border than it is to have soldiers. They tend to do things like build roads and what have you. They brought in a lot of mineral experts to see what we could do there as a way to put an end to this. A ceasefire, work out a deal, come up with a mineral deal, have a ceasefire, then work out some sort of peace treaty, and it gets put into the history books where it belongs. 1.5 million dead or more is more than enough. Now, Mr. Zelensky demonstrated to everybody, whether you're liberal, conservative, right-wing, left-wing, up, down, doesn't matter, he showed he is not interested in a ceasefire, and he said as much. He wanted the U.S. to kind of push things along. That was not the purpose of the presser, as we call it. Purpose was to make good comments, which Trump did, and talk about making the way to peace and having a deal signed that would be the first step in that process. It was a very well thought out plan, and compliments to Secretary of State Rubio's State Department for coming up with it. First, he started making faces, and that did not go unnoticed. He crossed his arms, and then he got very argumentative. What was he trying to accomplish? Well, there's some theories behind it, but none of them are making any sense. Anyways, he was showing great disrespect to the president, great disrespect to the vice president, great disrespect to where he was. And that doesn't go over very well in this country. Not at all. The whole point of that was to start a peace process, and he has demonstrated to everybody, that he doesn't want one. Now, when I was following this yesterday, I heard from someone, did you hear what Lindsey Graham said? He's a senator. And I said, oh, he's really upset. And I said, yeah, figures. Lindsey Graham is a big pro-Ukrainian guy. He wants to bomb Iran. He's a war hawk. He's, frankly, a nut, if you ask me, and a little bit crazy, but I thought, yeah, he's, of course, saying that Trump is responsible for all this and what have you. And then I turned on the interview. My goodness, Mr. Graham was saying Donald Trump did the right thing. He was very proud of him. And this is a guy who has been pushing to help Ukraine militarily and financially from the very beginning. And I'm thinking, my goodness, Graham is angry at Zelensky. That spells death for the Zelensky regime, and possibly the entire Ukrainian state, because Zelensky has lost his biggest single champion, a man who's been crusading for him. That's how disrespectful this was. If you can take your best friends and turn them against you, you've really screwed up pretty bad. Trump showed himself to be a solid, dignified American leader yesterday. He put this little pipsqueak, punk, corrupt criminal in his place, kicked him out of the White House. They didn't sign the deal, and several events that Mr. Zelensky was invited to were promptly canceled. He did go to Fox News. Fox News did have an interview with him that had been scheduled earlier. That was an opportunity to apologize. He didn't. In fact, I had a very hard time understanding what he was talking about. He chose not to use an interpreter. His English is far from fluent, and why he decided to do that is beyond me. To add injury to insult, it's come out that, and it's coming out this morning from several sources, many of them reliable, that while Vice President Vance was basically trying to straighten him out and tell him, sorry, this is not the place, guy, to talk like this, The president of Ukraine, while sitting next to the president of the United States, a country that's been defeated in war, sitting next to the leader of a very powerful, if not the most powerful nation on earth, cursed under his breath. The words he used and what they translate to into English, I'm not going to say what they are because this is a family-friendly podcast, at least I like to think it is. But the words he used translate into the English equivalent of what you call a female dog and a woman who sells herself. I will leave it to you to figure out what those two words are. Apparently they're used together in the Ukrainian language when you really want to curse somebody. Okay, wow. And they say Trump is not a good diplomat. I think he was the most diplomatic person yesterday. By the way, an American humorist named Will Rogers once said that diplomacy is the art of saying nice doggy, nice doggy, nice doggy, while you gently and carefully reach for a rock. Well, what does this all mean now? Well, first off, the mineral deal, in spite of what people are hearing, we don't really need it. It was a face-saving measure to get money back from these guys, at least some of it. $350 billion. Zelensky's saying it was only like 100 or 150 or something. Don't think for a second there's not many billions of dollars this guy has stashed away for himself and his cronies. Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe and arguably the most corrupt country on earth at the moment. And all that $250 billion, where did that go? Well, let me tell you something. Out of that money, if it had been poured into American infrastructure or even some economically depressed areas, we would have been far better off, and a lot more Ukrainians would be alive today, and Russians. The U.S. should have never backed that war. It would have been over in a couple of weeks. It really would have. It's a mess that dates back to NATO, and I'll go to that in a second. But let's go back to the money for a minute here. Have you ever been to West Virginia? It's one of America's poorest states. It's 93% white, and thus liberal governments that we've had in the past have done what they could to really screw it up. But it's made up of some very hardworking people. For a fraction of that amount of money that went to this black hole known as Ukraine and into God knows how many pockets, you could have built the economy of that state up into something that would give every man, woman, and child living in it a decent chance and a decent place to live, really. I've been to West Virginia many times, and the poverty you see there is on the same class as the poorest of the poorest in the third world. Yet all of that money was sent to this horrible, horrible use for it. The wholesale slaughter of human beings. And if you're a liberal, so-called liberal or woke or whatever, wake the hell up, okay? Really? Please? Stop talking about you're progressive. You're not. You're as backwards as they come. NATO should have been dissolved at the end of the Cold War. It really should have. It should have been dissolved. It no longer had a purpose. The Soviet Union was gone. It should have been reconstituted into something else that probably brought in what was then the Soviet Union, is now Russia. Yesterday, we had a chance to end everything in that part of the world that was wrong, everything that was deadly. And Zelensky decided not to. Now, there's an old saying, and I'm going to paraphrase it, never put off to genius and cleverness what is more easily put off to stupidity and ineptitude. But in Zelensky's case, I honestly think the guy was tooting too much cocaine. Yes, it's pretty well known in a lot of circles that the president of Ukraine, or the dictator, he talks about democracy, but he canceled elections so he wouldn't lose power. Yeah, he was probably tooting some snow. And don't do drugs, people. You might lose your country. That's probably what was going on. I was looking at his attitude and the way he was talking, and he was not very articulate. And unfortunately, when heads of state visit the U.S., we don't give them a urine test to see if they're on anything. Usually that's not necessary, but something we might want to consider for the future. That's basically it. Now, where it goes from here, I don't know. But Zelensky is what we call a dead man walking. Somebody in his government or somebody is going to off this guy. And I don't think it's going to be very far in the future. This guy has proven to be incompetent. He's proven to be corrupt. He is not interested in peace. This guy actually thinks, as Trump said, that he has any cards. He doesn't have anything. He had the goodwill of the United States government, in spite of the fact that he had gone to Pennsylvania last year to campaign for the opposition running against Trump. That's what he did when he went to that factory in Pennsylvania that made artillery shells. All Democratic politicians were around him. Wonder how much money they received from back channels from all this foreign aid. This guy was shown more respect than he deserved because the United States, the current administration of the United States, wants peace. It wants killing to end. It wants this terrible, terrible conflict to be put into the history books and that part of the world rebuilt and to people go on and having nice lives again. We'll see what happens. May whatever God you believe in be of help to Mr. Zelensky and Ukraine, because the United States isn't going to be helping anymore. That's it for today. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and share. Share with your friends and share with your enemies. After seeing what we saw yesterday, they might be friends by now. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. This podcast originates at Substack. The address there is aureliancolumn.substack.com. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and remember, Clown World and the deep state must be destroyed. Really, it must. Good day